Okay, so today's agenda is that we're going to do a quick overview of some new features. I'll demonstrate some of them, and then at the end we'll open up for some Q&A. Okay, so there has been tools added. If you've been using Management Reporter over the last several years, the version has matured and they keep adding new features to it. If you're new to Management Reporter, then you're just going to need more functionality, but there is some new stuff that's been added recently. One is that there's now a browser. You can actually see the reports in a browser, and that gives you the option to go ahead and use a single report for both a summary and detail. So depending on where your subtotals are, you can go ahead and just say, show me the subtotals or show me all the details. So a single report view, you can zoom in or zoom out depending on how much summary or detail you want. You now can have one report for unlimited currencies. Before, if you wanted to go ahead and have your functional currency and your reporting currency, you would have to set up individual column sets. Now you can go ahead inside that browser and flip between the different currencies both within it. And if you want to do some side-by-side reporting, a good example would be a balance sheet. Maybe you want the assets on one side and the liabilities on the other. You can now do side-by-side reporting within a row set. And you can also use some auto text for dynamic headings. Okay, so all of this you can go ahead and use to change the way you design. So the single report for summary and detail, you can go ahead now and create one row definition and use the summary lines only in the web viewer. So this means that rather than having two versions of the report, summary and detail, you now have one version of the report and can flip between the view you want. Unlimited currencies. So if you're not doing a multi-level, multi-currency consolidation and you just want to see reporting currencies, or you want to do the translation within the app, both in GP and AX, you now have the ability to go ahead and take that report and you can flip between currencies, and it'll go ahead and do the currency translation based on the settings in your account. And then the side-by-side reporting, which I mentioned earlier. And we can use a column format code in a row definition to break data into separate columns. So if you're trying to do side-by-side and side-by-side analysis inside rows, it's now, rather than going down the page, it's now going to go across the page. And then all of the things that you've been using in the dynamic headings, all of the financial dimensions, the calculate, the WKS columns, and the fiscal year and periods and the column definitions, you can now use in calculated columns as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a short demonstration of what that looks like inside the product. Okay, so the first thing is that in the row set now, in addition to the format codes over here, you can see that you're also going to have one for column. I'm just not seeing it in here, but there is a code in here, and we can go ahead and flip that to it. Okay, the next thing is that we can go ahead and when we generate the report, and let me just do this for period 12 of 2012, we'll be in the report viewer or the report browser. And let me just make sure that that looks good, and let me just check my company quickly. Perfect, and let me just generate this report. It'll take a moment to generate, and then you'll see that we can see in the web viewer. So we always had the ability to go to SharePoint or to go to the reporting library. In addition, it's now gone ahead and given you the option to view these reports in a web viewer. The web viewer gives you some display options. It's going to give you the option to go ahead and show summary or detail lines, and it's also going to go ahead and allow you to flip between different currencies. Only, and that changes the views. You can just see the salient points. If you go over here to show, you can also go ahead and show the headers, and you can show the details. So we can take that off of there, and now I'm back to the detail report. You can now see that you've also got a currency view here. So if I wanted to go ahead, if I had it in euros, if I wanted to switch that view, or if I had it in British pounds, I don't believe I do inside this company, but you could be able just to switch between your currencies. And then you can always go ahead, if you've been used to using the report viewer and management reporter and you want to go to the traditional library, you can just click on this button over here, and that's going to take you over to the management report library. And you can bypass the web viewer if that's your preference. You can also put some comments, and now I'm back in the report viewer library, and it's going to show me the report there. And I'm in the same report over there. Okay, so let's go ahead and here is this report over here. And so those are some of the new things you can do inside the web viewer. Okay, so let me go back to the PowerPoint for a second. Okay, there are some tips for going ahead and getting started quickly. So the one thing is that if you're using account codes rather than account categories are available to you, and they are another dimension in your chart of accounts. So whether you're using GP or AX, it's usually far easier to drive your reports off the account rather than having a code range of accounts. This way, if the account category changes for a given account, all of your lines will change simultaneously. In addition to that, we can use dimension value sets. So if you find that you're always storing the same number of codes or adding up a bunch of things together, you can store them and give them names and use them in your rows so that you don't have to keep calling out the same categories or the same account ranges. And then there is some stuff with wildcards and ranges. So if you're not going to use account categories and you want to use some wildcards, there's so many ways to ask for information. And so I'm going to show you a couple of different examples. And then Management Reporter is currently shipping with a number of default reports. The default reports have been written. I think there's 14 of them. They have a whole bunch of column sets and row sets. Obviously, they're not going to go ahead and line up to your chart of accounts, but you can go ahead and just tweak them to do that. But the column sets are very, very useful, especially for things like cash flow statements. Okay, so let me just do a deeper dive into some of these things. So account categories. They're used for all the default reports. So all the reports that ship from Microsoft are going to come with the account categories in there. And we update them, so if you're using the default account categories that ship with AX or GP, the reports can be used as is. If you've done some custom categories, you're going to have to go ahead and modify them. And we can update them in ERP only, and all reports update with the changes. So as you're making the changes in your chart of accounts in your ERP, it's going to change all of the reports that are within Management Reporter. Dimension value sets. So they're also used in the default reports that ship from Microsoft, and we can create them for reusable groupings. So the same way we've got reusable columns and row sets and reporting trees, we can also use dimension value sets, and that's going to go ahead and give you groupings that are saved for yourself, and then this way when you need them in reports, you just pop them in. And there's wildcards and ranges, and we use those for easy maintenance in the column, row, and reporting tree definition, and to make use of those 14 reports. So the same way in Office we say, file, save as, you can just keep using those default reports to give yourself different combinations, and they're just a tool for you to go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into efficient design tips. So if I go back to the Report Designer, and if I go into a row set, in addition to, you can see here the main account category, I can ask for ranges of accounts. I can also use for the main account category. So when I pop this open, the main account category, in my example, I'm using main account, unit, department, cost center, and category. Your category, which is what your main account belongs to, becomes another dimension in your chart of accounts. So if you just pop over there and I just back it up a little bit, you can see here, here's all my account categories. This is going across all chart of accounts, so CM, languages, etc. But if you number them, then it's actually going to fall into a number in natural order. So if I want to know my revenue accounts, I just go R for revenue, and I pop the code over here. Again, you've got complete control over how these are used. You can also, if I was not going to use an individual range, I can also use a dimension value set. In here, I could go ahead and let's go ahead and you can see here that this dimension value set, when I said for current assets, I don't want to have to keep going ahead and typing in cash and cash equivalents and short-term investments and AR and prepaids, inventory and work in process. So I just have this saved. I've set it up once, and now I can pop it in wherever I need it. So I'm using these dimension value sets to go ahead and add this in there. If I wanted to go ahead and get all of my accounts in here, or I want to insert from dimensions, I could actually just do a new set over here. And whether it's columns and reporting trees, I can insert rows from dimensions. In this case, these are all my dimensions that I have. I'll go to my main accounts and I'll do all of this. And now it's bringing in all the values from my chart of accounts. If I want the row for my line, I can, for cash and cash equivalents, here I'm listing each one individually. But if I wanted to go ahead and get all the main accounts, I can go from account 1000 to 1999. I can go across ranges. I can also alternatively, instead of doing this, I can go ahead and give it some wildcards. So when you do the wildcards, you can, let me just back it over here, I can go 1%, and that means anything that has, that starts with 1. I can also go 1_1, and I can go 1 star. So there's a number of different ways you can ask for the accounts efficiently in addition to using the account categories. Okay. And the same way when it comes for reporting trees, if I was going to do reporting tree definitions and I wanted to create a new one, I can go ahead and insert those from dimensions. And I can create pretty complex reporting trees automatically. In this case, I'm going to take some of these off. Let's leave the cost centers on. These have a lot of dimensions here. Let me just do this quickly, just to kind of paint the picture. And let's do it by legal entity. And I'm going to move that up, so you're going to control that. And just like that, you can do a reporting tree pretty quickly. In this case, it does have one legal entity, but you can do it across as many as you want. Okay, so let me go back to the presentation for a second. And then we have other things we can do. So we can do daily reporting. Are we improving day over day? I can do, is my data accurate? Does it have the right level of detail? And in addition, we can also do matrix reports. How are we performing across markets and channels? So there's some things that we can do inside there as well. So let me just go and show you a couple of items that we can do, and then I'll send out an example following here of a matrix report that's actually pretty good. So if I do column reports and I want to go day after day, or I want to go for individual days, rather than having over here just being able to go ahead and do a month, if I wanted to say a cash flow statement, and I wanted to go ahead and do a date range, I can enter starting and ending dates here. So I can make this an individual, I can say from July 1st to July 7th. And I can get activity in there just for that period. I can also go ahead and do something like this. Oops, I have to have more columns over here. This means it's going to show me everything that's on the second day of the month. I can put more columns in here and make it the third day of the month. And what this is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to go ahead and get daily reporting out of my general ledger inside my financial report. So there's two takeaways here. Either you can go across a range of dates if you want to hard code it, or you can go across the day of the month. And these can also be ranges. So you can go like 2, you can also do the same thing that you're used to doing, where you can go from 2, .7, and this way it goes against days. So you can get more into daily or weekly reports. Okay, so those are just a couple of quick tips that we wanted to go through this morning. And so let me go back to the presentation for a second. And now here's an example of a matrix report. So in this case here, we're used to periods of time being in the columns, but because the dimensions can either be rows or columns, in this case here, I'm using one dimension for retail channel for location going across as rows, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use another dimension going across columns, and I'm going to do a summarize. So in this case here, I'm able to do something using multiple dimensions inside a single report. And if you are interested in something like this, then you can reach out to us after the presentation this morning, and I can go ahead and just give you what was behind this report to kind of paint that picture. So depending on how you're using your dimensions, you can do something very similar to this, just to sort of get you thinking about how we're going to get how we're taking management reporter out of just financial statements into more of analysis reports.